Welcome back to Simple Robotics, the podcast, a podcast exploring the animation industry one episode at a time. I'm your host, Monique, and you can find me on all social media platforms at Simple Robotics. Now, I say this every time I'm having a podcast episode where I'm not by myself, but this episode that we're about to have is with Ruel Smith. He's someone that's participated in a couple diverse tunes panels last year for our virtual programming. And the more that we do these panels, the more that I've gotten to know him. And I thought he was the best person for this episode, obviously giving the time. You know, my background is alluding a little bit to what we will talk about in this episode. And we'll learn a bit more about Ruel and his career journey. But before we do that, I need to say that this is another episode that's being sponsored by Autodesk, and shout out to them. I'm so happy that's just a thing I get to say and that I'm being supported in that way. And the support has allowed me to really, elevate things on this side. But that's enough about me. Let's get into the episode. We are live. Hello and welcome everyone to our Simple Robotics, the podcast live. I am I'm Monique, I should say. And I'm hosting this show that just covers the animation industry ins and outs. And sometimes we have industry people like my guest Ruel. And then other times I have friends and we just talk about a whole bunch of variety of things. So today is my background. Is going to allude to a little bit of what we're going to talk about, and that this is a pre-recording, so you guys are getting this in advance to what this week will be, and I probably will have like a little rollout and what have you. But we're not going to waste too much time. Let's get into it. Ruel, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, such as starting from like where you're from?
Gotcha. Well, first, thanks for having me, Monique. I appreciate it. I try to catch as much of Simply Robotics as I can on your IG, and it's always kind of fun to chime in. I am Ruel Smith. I born and raised in Jamaica, moved to the U.S. for high school, East Coast, East Orange, New Jersey. Went to college in New York City, where I studied at the School of Visual Arts, along with another alumni, Monique. And then after college, I moved out to Los Angeles to pursue my animation career, which I've lived here for now 15 years.
Crazy. Yeah. So what was it like for you? Well, actually moving from first off Jamaica to America and then moving from East Coast to West Coast.
I want to say moving to the West Coast was a little bit more shocking from the East Coast than it was from Jamaica to the U.S., to New Jersey, New York City area. I mean, you grow up on American television, right? Especially being in Jamaica. So you watch a lot of just American shows and then cartoons and stuff. So there was always I get to live in, the U.S. And my mom at the time had lived in the U.S. since the 80s. So it was always this excitement to just be in the States and, just kind of be near New York City. The move to West Coast was a little bit more daunting because you're moving there you're more of an adult at this point, right? Like, and it's a career move. It's a big decision. You're by yourself. At least I was by myself. I had no one that I knew had moved to California at that time. I was the first, and I was moving out there with just like a suitcase and a dream kind of thing. And so it wasn't guaranteed, right? So I would say that would be the difference. One was more for business and your dreams, and one was just, relocating to live with my mom in the U.S.
And I like to ask all my guests this, like, what was your first job kind of like ever? Like when you first got paid versus your first job starting in the animation VFX industry?
My first job was at Sam Goody, the music store in Livingston, New Jersey, the Livingston Mall, New Jersey. 10th grade to senior year of high school. That was the era of Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, Christina Aguilera. So that's what was playing in the store all day, every day. Like that era of like the battle of the Christina Aguilera versus Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys versus NSYNC. And so that was my first job, paid job after school and during the summer. And my first job in industry I got to do, there was a studio after I graduated. I stayed in New York for an extra year, right? And I got this at this place called Treehouse Animation. They did the very first Star Wars Lego, the very first animated Lego thing.
Oh, okay.
And it started as an internship, which led into a paying gig. But they'd done Star Wars Legos, and it was this is like 2004, September, October 2004 to like about March 2005. And yeah, that was up by the Empire State Building. That was my first job. I got to put together, I'm not the biggest Star Wars person, like fanatic, but like, it's not the Millennium Falcon. I can't remember what this, like, it's a triangle shape. It's a triangle shaped piece, but my first job, it was like 10,000 pieces of Lego that I had to put together by myself.
Oh, no.
And that was like my hazing / initiation into the industry. Which everyone else today would be like, all my friends are like, oh my God, that was like the best first job. I'm like, I'm sitting there listening to Eminem in my headphones, just kind of putting together. It took me like 6 days.
Wow.
To put it together. 10,000 pieces. 10,035 pieces.
Do you have any pictures?
No, this is 04.
Oh.
I mean,
if you did, it's probably like gone, right?
Yeah.
So
we didn't have camera phones then.
You did mention that we both attended the same college, university, art school, what have you. Can you speak a bit about your experience there? Also, name the school.
I mean, it was amazing. I got a scholarship to go to School of Visual Arts.
Whoa.
2000 to 2004. I had done animation in high school, and it was to a decent level of what they were doing, what they were studying in freshman year in college. And so I ended up, speaking of which, okay, I think this should be mentioned. So I went to the Cicely Tyson Performing and Fine Arts High School.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I was like, how'd you do animation in high school back then?
Yeah. So, in honor of the late Cicely Tyson, who passed a couple of days ago, I went to the Cicely Tyson Performing and Fine Arts High School, and then a teacher at the school who was a Disney fanatic and taught band my 9th grade year. Mr. Vincent Patuto, he started an animation program, a 2D animation program. And I joined my 10th grade and then did that. And then we were just kind of known in the area of like, wow, they're doing some pretty cool stuff here. So then I got a special scholarship to go to SVA. And to me, I mean, it's an interesting space. My number one choice was Academy of Art. Oh. I think every person at that time, like, you're right there by ILM, you're right there by Pixar, you're already in California, so it was. And then my number 2 choice was School of Visual Arts. And the deciding factor, one was the scholarship, but the number 2 choice was I would get a chance to live in New York City. And I already knew I was going to move west anyway, or wanted to. So I said, let me choose New York City. And I'm really happy I did that, because I got to live in an art mecca, right? Like outside of just animation and computers, New York City is known for just being an art mecca. So so I was more, looking back, I was more into New York City for just being New York City and it being an art melting pot than necessarily animation at SVA, right?
Yeah, so this is like news to me. And now I want to ask you, do you feel in any way that your decision to attend art school in New York could have impacted your like career trajectory than if you would have went to school in California?
You know what? Yes, I think so. I think they both affected my career in separate ways. I think had I gone on here, like say Academy of Art, I think I would have probably would have had a better shot at like a Pixar at that time. I think your surroundings influence you
right
a lot. So like being right there, or being at Cal Arts, Disney, DreamWorks, so forth, are here. Academy of Art in San Francisco, ILM, Tippett. I was a huge Tippett Studios fan and a Phil Tippett fan at the time. And obviously ILM and Pixar. But I think in the long run, I got more of an art experience and an influence and art culture living in New York City especially during that period of time, than I would have gotten. I would have been more animated centric.
Right.
Whereas I got a whole well-rounded just because of the other departments. New York SVA is it was at a time was illustration, fine arts, photography, all these other figure drawing, all these other disciplines as well that kind of seeped in, and just the culture in New York City. Like I don't think San Francisco or LA would have given me that kind of cultural experience.
That's real. And I also, you've participated in some diverse tunes discussions last year. And that's when I learned that you were actually in college and in New York City, Manhattan during 9/11. Can you speak a little bit to that as well?
Yeah. I mean, I woke up my sophomore year of college in the dorms, the GW, which no longer exists. It's like a fancy place now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I woke up to the second plane, the first plane hitting the towers. And then fast forward through that, going up to the top floor, the solarium at the time, the lounge, looking out the window and seeing the second tower fall, in front of your eyes. That definitely impacted. It made it bigger than you're just an artist at school and it's just animation. It made it culturally about being in New York City, being together, being a community. And then that, I think it made me just, because we have a tendency to we're so in our heads, like we're so in our imaginations. Living in a city like that, it's more than just what you can think of in your head, but how does the outside world influence you and affect you, right? And so that was, for me, a wake-up call of just cherishing the things around you. So then, Central Park, going to MoMA, going to the Met, going to the Brooklyn Museum. You see what I'm saying? Like taking in all these other cultures that was the reason, like, you're not just going to SVA just to study art, but just to be a part of a community experience. And so that was the wake up call for me and a lot of people, it's just bigger than what's in front of you.
Wow. So, you got your first job in New York and then you got a different opportunity that took you to California, right?
Yep.
What was that opportunity, if you can talk about it?
Yeah, no, for sure. The goal was always to move to LA, right? Like that was at the time, which is interesting from now, which with a lot of the stuff is in Montreal, a lot of the headquarters in Vancouver or overseas. But like 2004, 2005, the Mecca was still LA to the point of, at that time, the SIGGRAPH, which is what got me to come to LA for the first time, was still only located in LA every year in the convention center. I think right around that time, maybe either the year before or the year after, is when they started alternating. But what they did was they alternated LA every other year from about 2005 or so. But before then, it was LA every year, the convention center downtown LA. And so I think maybe a month before, I decided I was going to take the chance and go. And I back then you had to like still show up with reel in hand, right? Like it wasn't like they saw it online. Like I remember when I graduated and I put my portfolio online on a website with your portfolio and QuickTime, that was ahead of its time. Like wow. That was like to email someone your reel in 04, 05 was just like, right. So you still had to put your reel on like a DVD or a CD or even still maybe a little bit of a VHS and bring copies. And then they watch your reel there at SIGGRAPH.
So they had like a thing like a VCR or DVD player to watch it. Like I'm not sure the thing, but I'm like, they had like the device, like what you would need, like a laptop maybe or something.
Yeah. So what they would do is, like when you go to the job fair section, they would have little booths. So you would send them your resume or, stuff like that. And then maybe some samples. And then if you got a meeting, then you can book a meeting there. And then you sit down and then they put your reel in and then they look at it. Right. And so, yeah, it was just in the convention floor. They had like a job fair section, right?
Gotcha.
And then each place had a booth, and then you can kind of just, schedule some time. And so, around that time, I think that was the first year Animation Mentor had started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so like Bobby Beck at the time was going around, trying to like recruit people. He was like the big sensation because he had just kind of pseudo quit, retired from Pixar to push Animation Mentor. But no, yeah. So I with a month before, and this is something that you do, like, it's kind of like Comic-Con, right? Mm-hmm. For our industry, like, you book this 6 months in advance, right? Like you think about this, like, I'm going to get my tickets. I decided I'm going to take a chance and I'm going to go a month before. And I found like some like shabby motel in downtown LA. Never been to LA. And went to the convention. I ended up I gave out my reel, and I ended up getting an opportunity with Digital Domain. I think I'd asked, hey, do you have any animation positions or any entry-level animation openings or internships? And I think they said no, but we have a tracking, camera tracking, match moving position. And at the time, I didn't know what that was, but I asked them, hey, what software do you guys? What's the software equivalent? And he said Buju. And so I went back to New York. I was had my friends, one of my college friends, basements in Brooklyn. Shout out to Jonathan Ellis. He studied comic book cartooning.
Oh, cool.
And so I went back and I learned Buju camera tracking. Then I sent them samples, and then they set up a test for me to come to the West Coast. That was like Labor Day weekend, 2005. And I flew back, took the tests for tracking. You spent 1 day learning. The next day, you took the test because it was proprietary software that they use. And then they gave me the job. They said, come back in a month and a half, like mid-October. But you have the job, and it's like a 3-month or like a 6-month job, probation. And then if you do good, we're gonna hire you on longer. I flew back to Brooklyn, getting ready to pack. They called me up 5 days later and said, can you be out here in 5 days?
Like for real.
For real. And it was like, I remember just saying, okay, let me think about it. And I hung up the phone and I just sat there for like 30 minutes saying to myself, I'm either going to do the most amazing thing or the dumbest thing. And I remember just calling them up and said, I'll be there in 5 days, and just kind of a suitcase and my laptop. And like at the time, maybe like $1,500, $2,000 in my name, and just flew to California.
No, that's amazing.
The rest is history.
So I want to ask you too, like, while you were at SVA, and you, like, what did you want to do? Like, because we mentioned Pixar, right? Did you want to be like a Pixar animator? Because I know what you're doing now. We're going to get to that too. Yeah. But what was your intention going into college? Yeah, I guess versus what you're doing now.
I think it evolved in college, right? Like, I think in high school, I was under just kind of the feeling of like, wait, you guys are going to make me do cartoons and animation as a class? Like, I can do this. Like, I would just do this for free or for nothing. So you're going to make me do this. So there was still that as a hobby, as a fan, as a fun part of it. And then it was like, okay, well, I can just go to art school and just study animation. And so I did that. But then I think so I operated from doing animation in college at first as a fan of just, you love something, you want to learn how they do it, and then you just want to do that. And then around junior year is where it connected. And I think the goal was the three, the Holy Trinity, right? For the most part, it was the Holy Trinity. It was Pixar, it was DreamWorks, it was Disney, right? Yeah. Like it was those three. And then obviously Blue Sky was on the East Coast, but I knew I wanted to be over on the West Coast. But there's other visual effects studios. And so I just love animating, right? Like it kind of, I just loved all of it. Like I look back now and I was just such a fan of the craft of animating, whether it's, love it. Pixar, or was it, ILM, type stuff? Was it Disney? Was it DreamWorks? Was it Blur? I was a huge fan. Coming out of college, I was a huge fan of Blur and Sony because they did both. They did live action VFX surreal fantasy, and they did cartoon, right? So like Open Season and like say Spider-Man for Sony, right?
Right.
And then you had Gentleman's Duel and Go for Broke, but then you had more like the realistic visual effects stuff that Blur did. So I really wanted to work at places like that, but I just was a fan of animation.
Yeah, I feel like I'm trying to think of like more like VFX questions. Yeah, let's just get into what you're doing now, today in 2019, 20, and 21. Yeah. What are you doing?
So today it's still a weird space for me because I've kind of pseudo official, transitioned out of being an animator into directing. So I direct commercials, VFX supervisor. And recently, I just got promoted to head of animation and visual effects at this commercial studio that I'm at called Step Studios.
Cool.
Yeah. And so that's where I'm now. I've around July, August, I transitioned into directing and visual effects supervising.
Okay. So we're going to story time. So what I want to double back in your career to what was it like? Like, how did you end up working on Black Panther? We're talking about VFX a lot, and I know some of my listeners don't know anything about like these terminologies and stuff. Like you can say VFX, okay, special effects, but like what is it that you actually end up doing? Because like animation, you see all these names on the credits, but you don't really know what people are doing. Really So how did your road to Black Panther, what you contributed, and then the aftermath, and like what did you do? Oh, we have a viewer question. Well, the viewer question works with it. Here we go.
Gotcha. No, for sure.
The viewer question. What made you transition into directing? So let's start with the Black Panther first. How'd you get there?
Start with that.
Yeah.
So once I got to work on Black Panther through a company called Digital Domain, which is the first company I moved out here for. So that camera tracking job I mentioned to you, that booth that I met at SIGGRAPH, their name is Digital Domain. They kind of blew up because of Titanic. They did Titanic, James Cameron and someone else founded it. When I had just finished, when I had just got there, they had just finished iRobot.
Okay.
So that was their biggest claim to fame at that point. Then they did Real Steel. They've done Benjamin Buttons, so forth. And so I did post-viz animation. So there's various versions of animation. Obviously, you have 2D animation, then you have 3D animation, right? And you can break 3D animation down into, say, Pixar or say like Spider-Man at Sony, right? Like it's that's 3D animation within visual effects, whereas one is 3D animation within character or cartoon animation, right? Which is what Pixar, DreamWorks, Blue Sky is. And so that's the difference. Visual effects is just more like the Marvel movies, think of Iron Man. What's the movie with why can't I think of it right now? You just said like
iRobot or whatever.
iRobot. Yeah. What's the other Will Smith movie?
I Am Legend with the zombies. I Am Legend
is what I was thinking of. Yeah. So like creature animation.
I hate zombies, but like that's ingrained, like it's burned in.
Yeah. It really was slept on as like
I'll
Michael
show this.
No, and so you think of like Harry Potter, that's animation within VFX. You think of Lord of the Rings, you think of those, you think of the Dragon and Game of Thrones. Those are more creature animation or animation within visual effects. And so Digital Domain, who they've gotten a bunch of Marvel films at different stages, whether it's previz animation, post-viz animation, and final animation. Previz animation is when you do a rough version of the animation to get the director, or the director wants to kind of visualize how to shoot it, right? And the team. Post-viz animation is after they've shot and they've kind of want to do a quick but like more precise mock-up animation of it. So you'll get a shot after they've shot, and you add the characters, like the superhero characters animating, but you do multiple different versions of it. So like a shot that I did was in the casino scene that I helped work on, I should say, because a bunch of different animators and artists are working on at the same time. But the shot where T'Challa ends up punching someone and then scales the wall and jumps up to the top to go after the claw, animating how he got up there in that shot, helping with when he runs out of the casino to chase the car and there's the backflip. Like even a lot of the early stages, like having to roto animate him and then animate him jumping up and then animate a car landing on it and swerve. And then you pass that on to other varying artists that take it up and like whether they add on effects to it, they render it out, they comp it in, and they pass it down the line. Post-viz animation, what I did on that was after they have shot the movie or they finished production, principal photography, you kind of take the shots and you animate different variations of how they want. Almost think of it as like takes, when an actor does takes, right? And then the director says, I like this take with this take. You're doing that from a visual effects standpoint.
So if I'm understanding, it's like they're filming the actors and whatever, let's just say in front of like green screens on stages and stuff like that. Yeah. And they composite it with like a background, and then you go in and you're animating other stuff like on top of all of that.
Well, you do a more generalist. So you take it and you're as a generalist, you're bringing in the character. You're doing a very rough, not final way of putting together the shots and doing multiple different variations of it and then sending it to edit. Okay. So it's almost like, think of like a music artist who say to a producer and a singer, a songwriter goes in and makes a demo track, right? And then they make that demo track and then they pass it on and send it on to Beyonce. And Beyonce might put her flavor on the song, but she sings it within, it's the same lyrics. And then they make the final version of the song. Post-viz and pre-viz animation is that demo track version of the movie. And then once they've figured out all that and they kind of figure out the story and how the sequence they want it to work, gotcha. Then they send it off to the final house that's kind of the way now it's being done as far as those Marvel movies. You literally make the movie like 3 to 4 times before you see it on screen.
So, I'm sorry. Yeah. Was there more that you were going to say? I was
just going to say, like, it was a project at the time that Digital Domain, and I've been working with Digital Domain frequently. Like I freelance at Digital Domain maybe 2 to 4 times a year. And so I think I went from Jungle Book, which you guys see the posters there with all the signed artists and Jon Favreau. I finished up on Jungle Book at DD, and then I went over to on like a Gears of War, and then the next, which is funny. So there's 2 projects. It was Black Panther and it was Ready Player One.
Okay.
And Ready Player One was at the beginning. Ready Player One was at the end of its production, and Black Panther was at the beginning. And so I would have been sent to London. At the time, I was trying to start my directing career. And so they offered me that one. And I was like, I don't want to be the person that's just coming on at the beginning, like the last month where you're just throwing bodies
right.
at a project. So I decided to pass on Ready Player One because if it's the last month, the hours are nuts. One. And I was in the middle of directing one of my first shorts. I was like in the middle of editing. And so I ended up passing on that. And then they moved me onto Black Panther. And so I started Black Panther there, and then they sent us to the Disney lot to be with the director and the editorial team.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So now that you're there, did you know from like the beginning, I know I've asked you this already, but this is for this. Did you know at the beginning that like you were working on something amazing, or was it like as you were working on it, you were like, oh, I think this is actually going to be good? Because, we've had some like hiccups in superhero movies. So,
I think, and this is just my perspective, I think to the extent of how it played out, no one knew inside it was going to be this. It was going to do all these numbers and be this sensation. I had known Ryan Coogler prior, like 8 years before, from when he was in college.
Cool.
And so what was interesting is I knew him from then through a mutual friend, and the VFX supervisor that was on that project at Marvel was from digital domain. And when I moved into tracking, Jeff Bauman, I spent my first Thanksgiving in LA at his place with his family at the time in Venice. So I had known him separately. So he had moved on from DD, digital domain. He became a VFX supervisor. I was doing my thing as more of an animator at this time. And obviously Ryan had done Fruitvale and then Creed.
Right.
And so we reconnected from different angles on this project. And it was just kind of like, it was more like seeing someone that their career, like it just skyrocketed in Ryan Coogler, and then someone that I'd known for a while in Jeff Bauman. It was more this kind of family vibe of, wow, look at where our careers are. And then being able to work on this project together. I think it was around the second to third cut from my perspective, where I thought we were on to something special. But I think on the inside, there was still the franticness to get it done. And it was so different. They were worried. I would say the worry was it was so much more different than what Marvel had been making, that the traditional crowd would not come to support it. And when you're talking about a $200 million film, that's a hell of a gamble.
Yes.
to make something outside of it. So I think it was just it was an ambitious project. The frenzy was more getting it done and getting it done on time and hoping that people embrace it for it being different.
Yeah. So that's like one of the huge reasons that I keep tapping on you to like speak and share your story, is because like we see the cast visually. It's a whole bunch of Black people, but we don't really know, besides the director, who else is Black that contributes to these productions and in what capacity. So I hope to, keep meeting more people that worked on Black Panther and also Into the Spider-Verse and other stuff where Black characters are the lead, because again, my whole thing is just showing it's okay if like you can't draw or you can't animate. There's different ways to contribute to a lot of this stuff. And we don't know that we are behind the scenes, making these things. Mm-hmm. So we have another comment saying that's an amazing full circle moment for how you guys all connected on Black Panther. So as you mentioned, you were working on a short as like you got your time or started off at Black Panther, but now you've made this career pivot to like directing now. And I know like you want to do more of your own, tell your own stories. Yeah. When did that come about where you said like, no, I have to make this push to do this stuff?
I always was interested in storytelling. Right. And it's funny in just thinking of, obviously prepping for this podcast talk with you, I just kind of wanted to think about all the stuff that I love. Why am I where I am at now? This path, because the traditional path would be more like animation director, right? Or direct within animation, because that's been my path. But the things that I love about a lot of the animated films and visual effects films is storytelling, right? And I think my journey was just through the medium of animation. This first act is through the journey of animation, to the medium of animation. And so I think it always, no matter what the medium is, if it's live action with VFX, if it's 2D or 3D animation, we all service the story and storytelling. And I think that should always come first. And so I've always been a fan and connected to storytelling. And I think because I was already in animation and I'm always behind a computer, I wanted to try other types of storytelling, which was just live action directing. Because a lot of other films that I love are just straight live action. And so I was dabbling in at the time. I think to kind of pull back a little bit, I am a huge fan of short films. Okay. And I realized I was more a fan of short films when I got out. This is why I love Blur. And the reason I love Pixar movies, because I would always watch the shorts before the film. Yep. And so I did. It's the reason why I wanted to go to Blur, because they did a lot of shorts. And I was like, oh my God, I can get paid to work on shorts. And so I started a short film festival in LA because I just loved shorts. And I did that for 4 years. And I went back to wanting to direct shorts, right? I got caught up in putting other people's shorts on the screen. And I was like, I want to put my shorts on the screen. And so once I finished up that short, I think Black Panther for me, and seeing Ryan Coogler, operate within the system, and seeing someone that looked like me from a similar neighborhood as me be a part of this big system and be able to tell the stories in a meaningful way, that inspired me. And it was like, okay, Ruel, you're ready to tell your own stories. Like, it's time for you to tell your own stories. And because at that time, I loved Creed. I loved the story of how Creed came about. I loved Fruitville Station. I was like, here is someone that gets to tell his story, but then he can still pivot in this space. Mm-hmm. And if I can tell stories like from a live action standpoint and be a good storyteller, I already have the 15, 16 years of experience in visual effects industry. I'm not worried about being able to direct a visual effects film. To me, it's like, I want to tell my own stories and tell meaningful stories. And he was able to do that from a Fruitville Station to a Black Panther, right? Like a big budget within a system, a small budget, but the storytelling was meaningful and it broke through. And that inspired me to be ready to now tell my own stories. And so in dabbling with it, I think I was like, okay, during Black Panther, before Black Panther, and dabbling with directing, after it, I was like, okay, I'm ready to commit to directing.
Oh, that's so dope. And so I feel like there's some almost like synergy going on, because granted, like I same major, trained in 3D animation, but now I'm like, I want to make a passion project and I'm going into stop motion for it. So it's like, why do these things in these different mediums? But it's all about, like you're saying, like you have a story to tell, and it's kind of like, why not? If you have the resources and you have the ability, and I feel like it's almost will haunt you if you don't do it, because you're still thinking about it all the time. And I feel like maybe it's almost like the universe has its own algorithm. So things popping up on your feeds and social media and whatever and TV, and you're like, I could be making my short film, my short project. But,
absolutely. And I would say too, like for people, going to we went to an art school, you know what I mean? Like we studied a technical thing within an art community, an art school. And I think I went to a performing and fine arts high school, and I went to art college. I think around the 5 to 7 to 8 year mark within the industry, being an artist started kicking back in, right? And so all these different passion projects is just showing that you're an artist. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, you're an artist. You want to create. You want to try different things. You might have done one thing for 10, 15 years, but you're ready to try a new medium and a new thing. And it reminded me to kind of kickstart that thing, that passion within me to kind of, tell stories.
Yeah. And we have a comment from Twitch saying, love the convo around short films. And, it's something that I hear a lot, too, and just that the whole, and I'm sure we hear it for a reason, that short films don't have any money. But they also say, like, short films are just the way to basically, like, learn how to do whatever it is that you want to do, is by just a crash course in doing a short film. Yeah. So I love that for both of us. That's still, like, I know feature is also on your list of things to do. But yeah, I love that for us. Like, we're creating stuff. We're going to pivot to the second half of the show, which is fun too, just as fun as learning about you. But we're not going to interview the whole time. The next part is to talk about some of your favorite animated TV shows and films that you shared with me.
Yeah. So, man, I had to do some digging up to remember, to going back into like rehash, Yeah,
I figured I should start giving people that space to do that, because they feel really bad. Like, I don't remember. And I'm like, it's okay. But I at least try to refresh my memory too, or watch some things if there's things that I haven't seen before. So one of your favorite animated films is the original Lion King movie from back in the 90s.
I'm joking. No.
No, but actually, this is really good, too, to have you talk about, because there was, like, the live action, it's, like, animated, like, Like,
yeah, that's definitely a marketing thing, right? Because they can't say animated, because from marketing, they think it's, like, a different thing, right? So it's a weird,
Yeah, so why is the original animated one your One of your favorites?
It just changed the trajectory of who I became, right? What I fell in love with. The two films for me that changed my trajectory, one, Lion King, two, Jurassic Park, right?
Oh,
And
I wanted to talk about Jurassic Park too. Okay.
I was just a knucklehead moving about in Jamaica, you know what I mean? And then I saw Lion King and it literally changed my life. And it was just a storytelling, maybe I was at the right age. Looking back, going to the movies was not a big thing in Jamaica, like affording it, the luxury of going to the movie theater. And it was probably the first or one of the first that I saw. And so it just had a big effect, but just a captivating story, right? And just all across the board, it just made me go, I don't know how they did that, but like, I want to do that. I want to know how they do that. And I want to do that for a living. And then also, Jurassic Park, seeing the dinosaurs. And so I think I was a fan of cartoons and storytelling and everything, but I think it made me a super fan and it made me become curious about the craft of animation. So yeah, I was just head over heels after that, after Lion King.
So your 2 cents to Jurassic Park, like I always bring up that film because of the practical effects and how it carries and it holds its own still after all these years, versus some of all these computer generated effects that we see, and then technology gets better and our eyes get used to stuff. So we look at things from 10 years ago and we're like, oh, this is trash. So what is your 2 cents to kind of like that conversation? Do you think there should be still a bit of practical effects included in all these VFX stuff that's happening now?
Yeah. And yes, I would say yes. But you're seeing it happening with virtual production. You're seeing it with Mandalorian. We've come to this point where there's a marriage of practical and visual effects on set at the same time. And that's with, virtual production and real time rendering and that process and visual effects. No, I really think so. It's the same thing like when you go on set or when you take reference images, right? Like you get reference images of an object and then you include it in. So you have a base of what reality looks like. If you're just left up to your own devices and what you think of is what realistic is, then you're always going to create it from a more imaginative space. And so if you, within that same shot, within that same scene, you have a sense of practical, that's always it's always the marriage of both. And I think that's why, Jurassic Park held up, because they made these audio animatronic dinosaurs that, whether it's the head or whether it's pieces of it, and then they add VFX into it, or creature dinosaurs.
So if you could, how would you have done or improved the 2019 The Lion King? Because isn't there going to be a sequel to it? Like,
they're doing I heard it's a prequel, Barry Jenkins. So that might end up being in a weird way good. We'll see. The jury's out, right?
Yeah.
But so Barry Jenkins is doing it, right? The guy who's done Moonlight, and he's about to do the Underground Railroad. It looks beautiful. If Beale Street could talk,
right?
So to me, it felt like National Geographic with talking animals.
That's what I say.
With like,
I say the exact same thing.
And so
where's Morgan Freeman? Like,
exactly. And so, there is that element, but then you're also taking an iconic thing that everyone loves, and it's just like, why? We don't need to, but I get it. It's the same thing with Toy Story, the same thing with Cars. There's always going to be remakes of a potential franchise, and trying to do it in a new way. I think it should have been stylized, in my opinion. Like I would have liked it, kept it in a stylized way. But I'm biased, man. Like I necessarily didn't love Lion King 1.5 or Lion King 2. Like I was like, oh, that doesn't exist. It never happened.
Did you like the TV show?
I never got into. I think I just kind of, Lion King was my thing, and I don't want to watch
everything outside of that.
So I got a chance to work on that Lion King, the 2019 Lion King, and a Jurassic, I think it was like Jurassic World.
Yeah.
Because it was the same team so the 2019 Lion King was the same team from Jungle Book. And Jon Favreau, and it was the same type of technology that was being used to kind of create it. And I just remember going, they were getting the band back together, and I was like, nope. I was like, the two things I will not touch: Lion King, Jurassic Park. I need to keep the kid fandom. I don't want to go near it. And so I think for me, I just stuck to those, and I just love those, and I protect my imagery of those two films.
I hear you. I did as a child enjoy watching the TV show, the Timon and Pumbaa TV show.
My mom loved the Timon and Pumbaa. She loves Timon and Pumbaa.
A great segue. So who's your favorite and least favorite character from The Lion King?
Ooh, obviously it's. So I mean, it's Mufasa, right?
Okay.
Is the favorite because, Simba was kind of young. Simba is probably number 2, right?
Okay, that's fair.
And then old Simba was still kind of growing into his space, and he's still, it's like, all right, you look like that weird teenager year, early 20s.
Yeah.
But and then you just love James Earl Jones's voice, right? You just can't beat that. Least favorite. That is because I love Scar.
I think Scar's a good villain.
So
anti-villain, whatever.
Quick segue, which Barry Jenkins is probably destroying my hopes of this. So a long time ago, I've always said that I would do a Scar film.
Okay.
Just in the same vein as Joker, but animated, where you take the villain, because Mufasa did something. Scar can't be he's covering up something.
Oh my gosh! Yes, hold them accountable.
I was just like, he covered up something, and there's so much that there's all this fan tale or fan theory thing of who's actually older, who is supposed to get it. That's not cleared up.
Okay,
that's left for open interpretation. So I always wanted to do a Scar thing. And then I heard Barry Jenkins is first he said he was doing a sequel, then it's announced that he's doing a prequel. I was like,
okay, yeah, if it's a prequel, it might be
a Scar. And I was like, darn. But I always said if I ever mess with it, I'll do that. Who would be? I love the hyenas. Wow, that is a great question. I feel like
maybe you don't have a least. You love everybody.
Yeah, I love everybody. Zazu is good. Yeah.
That's good.
Everybody gets love.
We're going to come back to that later.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a comment from YouTube. Scar definitely needs his story on the big screen.
Yep.
So if no one else, we know we got a viewer here. He's coming out.
Yep. I'm still low key write it, and then if they let me into the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually feel the same way about Ursula. I feel like she's pretty interesting, and I would like to see her in a Maleficent treatment for Ursula. Always. So
that's a good call, actually.
Yeah. Your next movie is The Iron Giant. And so if there's someone out there in the interwebs that have never seen The Iron Giant, can you try maybe 3 sentences max? Can you summarize what the movie's about?
Oh, sum up. So it is a little boy raised by a single mom who comes in contact with a giant robot. And it takes place during the World War II era. And he befriends a robot who ends up saving his life.
Okay.
Spoiler.
Yeah, that's fine. So why is it one of your favorites?
So it is the spark of Brad Bird as we know him. It was just, I just think it's the emotional connection, right? And at the end, Superman, you can't, Vin Diesel's finest work.
Yeah, I know. That blew my mind when I learned that. It was so random. In that era, the 90s and 2000s, the Disney thing was just dominating, right? The Disney look, the Disney style, and I just thought this film just came out of nowhere, and it was just so different. It had that World War II kind of look to it. And I just thought it was a great story. It was amazingly animated. They incorporated the 3D with the giant, Iron Giant.
And I mean, it was just an emotional connection between a boy and his best friend robot, right? And just when he ends up losing him, or he risks his life to save his, it was just, man, it's that scene. And looking back, the scene that I knew I wanted to be an animator was the scene where Mufasa falls off the cliff and Simba is tugging on his ear, waking him up. I was just like, I don't know how they made me feel that way, but I want to make other people feel that way. And so it's the same scene at the end where he risks his life, the giant, for the kid, was just such an emotional connection with me and the viewer that I was just like, this is an amazing film.
Okay. And your next favorite film you mentioned was Tarzan.
Yes. Tarzan, obviously for the connection of it. But and I would say that one was the one of just the animation.
Yes.
Of it. Like their mixture of 2D and 3D was just so fluid and just so out of the park. And then you still had the amazing story within it, right? So it's the marriage of compelling storytelling with just kind of like really fluid, engaging animation.
Do you have a favorite moment from Tarzan?
The end where there's two. The first sequence you see when he's as an adult, damn, there's three. So the first one is when the mother gorilla saves young Tarzan from I guess it's the cheetah. And that whole sequence of it, falling and grabbing and getting in and out. And then the sequence where when he's older and he first kind of moves through, like swings and slides through the vines.
Yeah.
Just that first, that animation sequence, you see him. And then at the end, when he fights and defeats the cheetah. I just thought that was such an amazing sequence of just the final battle.
So next, moving on to TV shows, you have OG show, Tom and Jerry. I'm going to ask you, just in case there's someone that's never seen Tom and Jerry before.
There it is. Come on. If you've never seen Tom and Jerry,
I don't know.
Say it in the comments.
Maybe I just want to hear you summarize it.
Summarizing Tom and Jerry is amazing and nuts at the same time. It's a rivaling buddy / enemy / brother sibling thing between a cat and a rat and a mouse who are always trying to take each other's heads off.
But then they kind of like have each other's back at the same time. Like only I can mess with them, like not you.
Yeah,
you know?
It's based on a cat and a mouse who lives in this house that has to coexist, right? And they always messing with each other. Just the whole cat and mouse game. But yeah, what's interesting? Like why do I love these, like those type of things? I think it's my environment. The ultimate frenemies. Yep, that is so true. So growing up in Jamaica, we only had one television station, or I had access to one television station. I think my mom, for some reason, I grew up with my grandmother. So I'd visit my mom early 80s. She's a nurse on like holidays, like summer holidays, Christmas holidays. And she had satellite, which was just, I'm looking at it, I'm like, that is nuts. I can't even remember. Like, that's so far ahead of its time in the 80s in Jamaica. But like growing up, I only had one television station. And so you were limited to you were at the mercy of what they played. And they used to play Tom and Jerry cartoons, Bugs Bunny cartoons, Elmer Fudd cartoons and stuff like that. Before the hour and after the hour, just when a show ends and you have that 5-minute slot before and after, they would play those cartoons then.
Cool.
And so I just growing up, and they would do it in the morning when you're eating breakfast, going to school, and when you get home from school. The Chuck Jones, Fred Quimby, yep, love those. And so you just naturally grew up and fell in love with those cartoons just because of Saturday morning cartoons. Those were playing on the one channel. And so I just grew up watching that and just being in love with the style and animation, but just as a fan, just not even like at that time, not even wanting to, I want to pursue this. You know what I mean? Like as a career or to do it. It was just, I just loved it.
Do you have like a favorite moment from Tom and Jerry? There's so many that's good, but is there
so
something that
many.
like, or maybe that stands out to you, like you'll never forget it?
I think one of my favorite ones was the moment where Tom is trying to measure the distance for when the dog is tied to the kennel.
Okay.
And he goes up and he like measures the cord, right? Like he kind of like figures out how long it is and he takes a paces and he draws a line and the dog is sleeping and he walks over to the dog and slaps it on its head and he goes to the line and the dog reaches and it's like chomping. And I think Jerry removes the line and then makes it shorter. And then he gets, and I just thought just how you set up that animation pacing and the storytelling for that. So he ends up like jumping on him and like kicking his ass.
Okay. And then now you have another show that you shared is Dragon Ball Z.
Dragon Ball Z.
And my friend, the Michael Pitter that's here, that's one of his favorite shows too. So,
So that's interesting, right? Because I had to do a little bit of catch up. And I think, you know, what's interesting about talking about childhood cartoons, it's almost unfair to go back and try to critique it with your more advanced, with your more technical know-how, especially if you know how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
And so I just did a quick catch up on that storyline because I experienced it at a younger time. Mm-hmm. This was obviously older than Tom and Jerry and Lion King, but like, it's interesting going back and just kind of connecting with how it made you feel at that time, more so than trying to like play catch up on it. It was just an interesting comparing both those two times. I most likely watched a different Dragon Ball than most people got to see.
Oh, that's going to make things interesting.
Yes. So I watched it still in the VHS era when it hadn't been dubbed it wasn't readily available in dub. Like I went back and looked and there's like a Canon and there's like a GT, like Go Monkey is a thing now. That's probably like so low level now. But that was when I watched up the Dragon Ball Z, and Go Monkey was like this thing way in the future that maybe like, I think it was like Super Saiyan 2 or 3. But the reason why I bring this up, I was living in dorms in SVA freshman year, and another artist that I just made friends with, he had Dragon Ball VHSs on his wall. And he said, hey, check this out. And so I watched Dragon Ball, which was, I think, the story of Goku, right? Like it was just his younger years of him as a kid growing up. And then I had to go down to Chinatown and get bootleg VHS tapes of Dragon Ball Z. And I think we paid like $5 a tape. And you got 3 episodes, but it was still Japanese, and it was the English version of it wasn't there. So you just got the subtitles. And yeah. And so like back then they called it like Mr. Hercule is like the American name that they changed it to. He was like Satan, Mr. Satan or Satan or something. But like, yeah, like I watched it, just the Japanese bootleg tapes that we had to go down to Chinatown to this like comic book animation store, pay $5 a tape, got like 20 tapes and just binge them. Before
what I'm
binging
hearing
was a thing.
is like back in my day, right? We had to take the D train down to Canal Street. Okay.
So I don't even know the new. I think now it's become more Americanized after that. Mm-hmm. There's so much more like, I looked and I'm like, what is this whole new Dragon Ball?
So I know the way anime works, like things get real complicated. Mm-hmm. So same thing. Can you like condense and let's say maybe like two sentences? Do you think you can say what this, so it's such an impactful show. I think it really defines a generation or two,
It going back and watching the timeline. I just watched like a timeline to kind of refresh. It was ahead of its time storytelling. Like I see a lot of the storytelling that I love now in it that was so complex and so like non-linear and time jumping. It follows a bunch of aliens from across the galaxy, different like beings across the galaxy, certain races like the Super Saiyans, and then these other folks. But it almost has a trajectory of the Superman story where these bunch of fights are happening and their planets are being blown up, and this father ships his son Goku to Earth or to another planet to be raised by another family or someone else. And he falls in with this master martial arts guru called Gohan, right? And so he ends up being raised there, but they've been trying to kill out his race, right? So they follow him there, and then there becomes like this battle for supremacy and dominance and wiping out a race. But then the two people in the same race, these Super Saiyans, who are enemies, end up having to be friends to defeat another enemy. And but here's this young martial artist who ends up having a kid and then goes off because he just loves martial arts training. And it's this weird storyline of like coming back from the future and them building up it's such a hard thing to kind of follow. I will say where I left off for all the Dragon Ball fans, I left off when like Super Saiyan 2, where Gohan, Goku's son, defeats the ultimate bad guy. At the time was the bad guy, and we had just made Super Saiyan 2.
Okay.
And that's where I fell off after that. Like, I don't even know what comes after, but to me, that was like the greatest storytelling battle ever. The son takes up the throne from the father and defeats, the bad guy.
Do you think you will go back and revisit or try and pick up where you left off?
Probably not. No, because you want those things to kind of, that was probably the first thing I've ever binged before binging was a thing. And it just played such a pivotal storytelling and animation time in my life at the time, with knowing how it's made now and being on the other side of that as being, a more seasoned animator, artist. I don't want to mess up the childhood or the more innocent side of that.
Understood, yeah.
And from what I caught up with it, I did an explainer. After that, it just, one felt like you're making, to kind of go back to like the Lion King and Lion King 2 and Lion King 2019 and Jurassic Park World and stuff. One felt like we're creating something here. And the other felt a little bit like we're capitalizing on a franchise. Right. And, definitely let me know if I'm wrong as far as with the new GTs and the new other storylines. But like, to me, it felt like they were doing something so different at the time, and it just felt true.
In a huge way, which I want to make a future episode about, that's like my struggle with Ninja Turtles. Like, I love Ninja Turtles so much, but it's like they just also just won't leave it alone. And I feel like they won't let us miss Ninja Turtle. Like, I don't think it needs to vanish, but they just keep doing so much with it, just back to back. Like, I feel like every time there's a new one, they don't really give it enough time to like marinate in the culture before they re-image the Ninja Turtles again and push that back out.
Yeah,
so,
I got a little bit of that fatigue with Spider-Man, but then I really liked Spider-Verse. So.
Yeah.
The
next we have a game called One's Gotta Go. It's not that intense because I figured.
No, I love it. I love that type of stuff.
It was hard to pick One's Gotta Go for Iron Giant, so I just skipped it because I was like, there's only like two people really that you care about, so everybody else can go. So for the Lion King, One's Gotta Go: Zazu, Timon, Pumbaa, or Rafiki.
Ooh.
Knowing that you love everybody.
Zazu. Sorry, Zazu.
Why?
Because Timon and Pumbaa are a duo. If you lose one, and you can't lose either of those because they just carried the comedic relief of that film. Rafiki, he's the godfather of it. You can't lose Rafiki.
Okay.
I'd say Zazu. My bad, Zazu.
Okay, for Tarzan, we have Turk, Jane, Tantor, who's the elephant, or is it Kala, who's the mom gorilla?
Oh, mom got to stay.
I feel like that's not that difficult for you.
Jane.
What? Jane?
I mean, she called, like, okay, so
I thought you were going to say the elephant.
Okay, so in storytelling, I'm not a fan when, like, all is hanging, like, a superhero changes his course for a love interest.
Okay.
Like it's, and then it's just like, he ripped apart his whole family because like, she brought the colonizers to the place, right? Like, I would say she's got to go.
She's got to go.
Because then he falls in love with her, and it's just like, but then again, she's the cause of all of that stuff,
Stick
man.
to your answer.
Yeah.
Jane's gotta go.
Sure.
Okay,
The
so
elephant's gotta stay. Come on, we love the elephant.
yeah, I know, but I still thought you were gonna say he had to go.
Nah, Jane's gotta go.
So we have 2 rounds for Dragon Ball Z, and I hope that you should know everybody because I don't. I've never watched Dragon Ball Z for no real reason. So I had to ask, my friends that watch Dragon Ball Z for help.
Yeah.
So we have, I'm going to butcher everybody's name too. Is it Vegeta?
Vegeta, yeah.
Cool. Vegeta, Piccolo,
Ooh.
Kid Buu, and then they said the Super Saiyan to Team Gohan. Do you know what that is?
Kid Buu has got to go.
What? Why Kid Buu?
Because you named Vegeta, which is like a pivotal good guy / bad guy. Piccolo, everyone loves Piccolo. Piccolo raised Gohan, the son of Goku. And then what was the other one you said? What was
Super
the third
Saiyan to Team Gohan? And said Cell
Super
Games?
Saiyan to Team Gohan.
Maybe that's a little after you stop watching. I don't know.
Super Saiyan, were they combined? Oh, no, you got to keep, the one that defeated Cell. Yeah, you got to keep him. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So what's up with Kid Buu? Why does he have to go?
Because I don't remember that character. And the other that you read.
Because I don't know who that is.
Here's a cartoon we should bring up for real quick.
Okay.
Thundercats was one of my favorite cartoons growing up. Like, it's within the Tom and Jerry space. I just like it came, I was like, man, Thundercats.
No, talk about it. Thundercats for me was like a filler TV show. So like it was on while I was waiting for what I wanted to watch.
Which was what?
And probably anything. I didn't really like Thundercats.
Yo, come on. I need my people to show some love in the comments.
You have support. Look, this is your Thundercat support right here.
Thundercats. He would shine that little skinny ass. He would block that beam with the skinny ass sword.
So I'll explain it to you. For me, as a child, I didn't really know that there was much difference between Thundercats and cats. 'Cause I was a small person, okay? I was a small person. And cats really scared me. So I thought there was a correlation between Thundercats and cats.
They added thunder to it, right?
I don't know. I was just like, they all had like, it was the faces, you know? Like in Cats the Musical.
Yeah. He said which Thundercats? The original, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's been a reboot or something.
Oh, yeah. I haven't. This is the 80s. This is, This is the 80s. I haven't seen the reboot or any of the new stuff.
It's for the best, I'm sure. We have another round for Dragon Ball Z.
Okay.
I think it's Tien, Tien.
Mm-hmm.
Yamcha.
Mm-hmm.
Krillin. And
ooh, Krillin is cool.
Hercules?
Yeah, Hercule, and then that's the Satan guy that they changed. They changed his name for the American audience.
Oh,
when
okay.
they made it, they dubbed it in America. I'm gonna say Tien. I don't remember who that person is, but Krillin is dope. And Mr. Hercule. He was like you know what? Mr. Hercule was a corny like bad guy. Like we had been through some like amazing bad guys, and then we got to Hercule, and I was like, all right, I gotta wrap this series up.
Like they got lazy.
They got like super lazy with the bad guys. We had Cell, we had Majin Buu, we had Vegeta, who I love Vegeta. Yeah.
Okay. So we're winding down a little bit. These are the questions that usually stump people, but it's okay. Okay.
Uh-oh.
So don't worry about it. next to last question I have is, which character in like all of animation cartoon ever would you feel like you're most like?
Most like.
Yeah.
Like I'm like that character.
Yeah. So I've had people say Miles Morales.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm blanking on what people have said before, but people
No,
have said stuff.
I got you. Oh, that is a great one. I would probably say Simba.
Oh, okay. Why you say Simba?
I feel like just of how he's like a good blend of like, he needs to kind of come into his own, but not be sure. He's very unsure of it. And, I feel like with animation, that was always kind of like my thing. I needed to kind of step up to the plate. I was always punching above my weight. I always felt like, you know what I mean? It was not as natural as to the position as a lot of people are. I didn't have this thing to pull from before. Like it was just kind of me. So the whole, like, I feel like I connected with him of the moment might have been too big for him. And then he kind of ran away, but then he came back to kind of, and I felt like that through college, through high school, college, and even in the industry, always feeling like I was punching above my weight and I've had to always prove myself.
Wow. That was really good. And to piggyback off of that, I also ask people to, using animated characters, cast their biopic. So you can do like your mom, your grandma, using animated characters. Using
animated characters so am I saying this movie would be my family?
Yeah. And they don't need to coexist in the same whatever. So if you're a Simba, your grandma could be, I don't know, anybody.
Gotcha. Man, that's a good one. Who would I go with? Man, we didn't even go, like, I love Emperor's New Groove. That's one of my favorites.
Cool.
I'm trying to, I don't want to make anyone. That's such a good one.
I would say be careful. Someone wanted to say their mom was like the gorilla in Tarzan, and they were like, I don't want to call my mom a gorilla. And I was like, don't call your mom a gorilla.
I would say my mom, it's animated films, right? It has to be animated films.
No, it could be cartoon TV shows too, if you wanted to do. Like someone said like Sugar Mama.
My mom would be, that's not even an animated cartoon. I was going to say she would be T'Challa's mom in Black Panther.
Oh, yeah.
She's stern. My mom is like stern. She's caring, but she's stern. She rules with an iron fist a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know in the animated world who is kind of like that.
Yeah. I can't think of.
I don't know. Is Trudy Proud a little bit like that? I don't think she's that stern.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good one. I've never. You've definitely stumped me with that one.
I usually stump people.
That's a really good one. I've never thought of it.
But now you will. I'm a lot like Bubbles from Powerpuff Girls.
Okay.
That would be me.
Nice. That's pretty cool. That's hilarious. I like that.
It's very funny because when I get upset, it's just, is it serious? Like you're too adorable to be cute. And I'm like, but I'm angry.
Well, tell me a little bit about some of the cartoons you grew up on, like because you grew up in the U.S., right? So you're Caribbean as well.
Yeah.
But you grew up in the U.S.
Yeah, my cartoons that I grew up with, like, fortunately, from talking with my peers, like I had cable. So I was able to really be obsessive over the Nickelodeon stuff in the early 90s.
Hey Arnold, I was a big Hey Arnold fan.
And what was it, like Nickelodeon, their Nicktoons? I grew up with that. And Cartoon Network, their own specials. So before Powerpuff Girls and Dexter's Laboratory were even actual shows, they were just like pilots and short, like 10-minute kind of things.
Oh, wow. Gotcha.
And also growing up with the Disney stuff on the Disney Channel. But my mom actually used to record cartoons on VHS because the similar thing, they only came on like on weekends and stuff, and she would play them over the week.
Nice.
And like my thing is with the Bugs Bunny cartoons and a lot of the Tex Avery, Chuck Jones, she would play that when she would braid my hair at night.
Nice.
So that's like my black girl connection to those cartoons is getting my hair done, oddly enough. Nice. And a lot of the black and white cartoons and those like melodies and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Animaniacs was another.
Oh, yeah, and I want to watch the reboot of that and probably make it like a future episode because like you were saying, it's like you want to protect like your childhood and your love for these shows. Yeah. But I haven't seen people trash the reboot. So I'm like, I should do it, you know?
Wheel of Morality.
Yeah, the Powerpuff Girls reboot, I'm not interested in it. Because
you were a Powerpuff Girl, like you loved the cartoon.
I did. I loved everything Cartoon Network had to offer, with the exception of Courage the Cowardly Dog, because that was too intense. I tried it. I watched a couple episodes, and I was like, "This is really bothering me." Like, you know.
Where do you see how like cartoons are now, like versus then? Just from the making of it, like, do you thought like from the networks are making more cartoons?
So this is your show now? No, I'm joking.
Well, I mean, I'm a fan. Like,
I'll answer. Yeah. No, I appreciate you asking me that. I think now, I would say because of mommy blogs, things have gotten so like safe, you know, and a lot of the edge that we grew up with in the 90s had to be filed and rounded off. So a lot of this stuff I think is pretty clever, and I like how inclusive things are in so many different ways for children to see themselves represented in cartoons, where that was an oversight for me. Like, I didn't care. I thought I was everybody if I wanted to be, like, you know. I think that's cool, but they really used to push the boundaries with like some of their jokes and physical humor, and they don't as much.
I went back as an adult and watched some Tom and Jerry, and I just remember, I think it was like Jerry chasing Tom with a sawed-off shotgun, and I was just like,
yeah, it wouldn't fly right now. A lot of the like Dexter's laboratory, he was very verbally aggressive with his sister Dee Dee. Like, if we want to break it down, and it's like, man, you probably wouldn't have that. So,
gotcha. No, that's awesome.
I do want there to be a bit more of like the kind of like teen animation stuff again, where we had like my favorites was X-Men Evolution, and I was rewatching some of the old X-Men stuff, like, and it's like
Beyond and the X-Men.
I would like some of that kind of stuff to come again and to be a bit more serious than just like Steven Universe, as much as we love that and it's its own thing, but like a little bit of that darkness and like intensity. Like when you go back and watch the old X-Men from again like the early 90s, it's like it's intense.
Yeah. And it's such a like there's so much more algorithm available. Like we get pitched at work or just in the industry, like you get pitched of their Cartoon Network is looking for this, or this person is looking for this, but you're looking for this demographic, 6 to 10 global, this thing. And I think the algorithms and the marketing and the capitalization of it is like marginalized. They now know where their best bang for their buck is in the audience that's watching it. So I'm wondering if they're not getting as much of that, as you're saying, those teen cartoons.
Yeah, I would love for that to come back.
They would rather go make X-Men, Marvel. You know what I mean? They'd rather go make the superhero Marvel films, MCU universe versus.
Well, it seems to be like really polarizing, where you either get stuff for like really young kids or you get definitive adult. Like, what's the horse one or whatever? Bojack, is that his name?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So you get like stuff like that, or like Big Mouth or whatever, and then you get these other cutesy little things, and we're missing that middle ground. And like you're saying, it's probably because of like money and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think with HBO Max is doing a lot of DC animation.
Oh, really? I just got that last night, too. I literally just signed up for it last night. Animation
programming is very exciting for me because I love the Cartoon Network stuff, so I can watch it. But I know that their DC animation, some people have said some really good things about it. Harley Quinn has a show, and there's some Joker stuff. Look, we have a second DC animated series are legit. So with them kind of doing well in this market, we'll see if other, studios might want to piggyback and chime in too.
Yeah. My last question for you.
What? I'm trying to wrap this up. I'm partially
sorry.
kidding.
Go ahead.
No. Ask the question.
Being someone that works in it versus, how do you separate the fun versus the always technically breaking it down?
It literally, for Soul, I had to make that mental block. Like, I'm going to watch this the first time and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm not going to say anything about if it's blackness and lighting and movement and all sorts of stuff. And like, let me just enjoy this for what it is.
Okay.
And then the second time, I was being a bit more analytical from it. But yeah, of course it's hard, but I don't know.
I've struggled with that, especially now going into more filmmaking where you're at the head of the ship, like writing the stories, separating it from just enjoying it, then technical.
It's probably impossible, but like I literally like verbally talked to myself out loud and said, "You're going to enjoy this movie." Like, you're not going to do that stuff.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, anyway, that's probably the reason why I don't want to watch the Powerpuff Girls is because oh, and you know what? Teen Titans Go. That's like, I know people say it's a good show, but like, I don't like that style of like animation. And I love Teen Titans already, and I didn't want to do that with it. And we've covered that a little bit. But on HBO Max, you can watch the original Teen Titans.
Oh, nice.
The Batman animated series and Batman Beyond.
Yep.
They're all on there. So I was like, okay, I'm happy. Like, So.
Yeah. So yeah. That's good to know. Thank you. That's good to know because like I definitely want to check that out.
You will, and you will love it. And you're going to be like, I told you, like, or you were right or whatever. Tell the people where they can reach you, social media, website, if they want to check out some of the things that you've worked on. Yeah.
My website is so outdated. I need to update. That's my goal for 2021 is to revamp.
We shall hold you accountable.
So Real Ruel, REEL, realruel.com. My handle is Real Ruel on Instagram, on Twitter, I think, and then Facebook, which is Ruel Smith. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, and
we all branded.
We got one last comment saying Young Justice is good too. Yeah, I did see some stuff about that as well.
What, is that on
HBO?
Okay.
Okay. So they have a whole like DC like area.
Thing. Yeah.
So you're gonna love that.
Nice.
Thank you for joining me on this Sunday to do this episode. I appreciate it. It's been fun and funny. Thank you, viewers, for commenting and participating and all that goodness. Like I said, you guys are getting a preview. This episode's actually not going to be out for real for a couple of weeks. So I'm happy that we were able to do this. And take care, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Didn't I tell you that was going to be a good episode? Like, also, who told him he could interview me? This is my show. I do the interviewing. No, I'm kidding. I think that's part of the fun of having guests on the show is that, it's actually able to be a conversation and not just me talking to imaginary people that I don't see when I'm filming, and it adds to personality, whatever, dynamic interest. So once again, you can find me on all social media platforms at Simply Robotics, the website simplyrobotics.com, SIMPLYROBOTIX. I do have a Patreon, which is where either one, you can listen to this, or you can, no. I have a Patreon, which is where one, you may be watching this episode if you're watching it. Two, you can see some behind the scenes stuff, vlogging of me producing, making this passion project. And three, I actually do have some interviews that's up there that I didn't post on social media yet that I guess I'll be posting now after this episode comes out. So you can check out just some stuff that I didn't actually share on social media, but I've done and it's around there. So, I am, populating the Patreon a bunch. I know that what I can say is one of the episodes that I have coming for March is in celebration of Women's History Month. So I'm really really excited. Like I said in the beginning of the episode, like you will hear me say in that episode, I am excited for this conversation. It's with someone that I do look up to and respect that works in the animation industry. And, you know, I will say that I use her kind of as like a guidance from the outside of looking in as to what I'm trying to do and how I'm trying to navigate my career or where I'm trying to aspire to. So it was very, very dope to be able to sit down and just chop it up with her. And I hope you guys can take away some things from that conversation too, but that will be in a couple weeks from now. You know, right now we're going to focus on this episode and enjoying this episode. But yeah, thank you so much. And until next time, bye.